Welcome everyone to this debate organized jointly by Deusto and Aspen, Spain. It is a very big pleasure to have today with us John Podesta, one of the leaders of the Democratic Party in the US. Nobody like him can help us understand what's going to happen or what could happen in the next months or years in US politics, and that means also global politics. We're deeply grateful to John for making it and for sharing this space and this conversation with us. Thank you also our moderators and friends, Matt Brown, Senior Fellow of the Center for American Progress, and also affiliated with Deusto Global Affairs, and Rocío Martínez Samper, Aspen Fellow, Director of the Fundación Felipe González. And I would like just to tell you that we will continue to create these conversations about critical issues for our society from Aspen, Spain, and hopefully do more joint collaborations with our dear friends from Deusto Global Affairs. Thank you, Juan Moscoso. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Jose Maria. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, John Podesta. Thanks for being here with us this afternoon in Spain and all over the world. It's a big pleasure to be part of this initiative of Aspen Institute. I'm a proud fellow of Aspen, and also from Deusto Asuntos Globales, from Deusto Business School, from Deusto University, my university. I'm very happy now to pass the words to Matt Brown, that with Rocío Martínez will coordinate this talk during this afternoon. Thanks everybody for being here today. Matt, the floor is yours.
Thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to briefly introduce our speaker today, John Podesta, who is an old friend and also former boss, and I suppose current boss in many ways. He is, as many of you know, the founder for the Center for American Progress, but prior to that has a very long and distinguished career in US politics, including serving as former President Clinton's chief of staff. He ran the transition process for President Obama when he took over from George W. Bush. He served as the chairman of Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016, and of course is a very close advisor and confidant to many of those people who are now serving in the White House under President Biden. John is also a longtime friend of progressives in Spain. He, Juan, Rocío, and I have spent a great deal of time working together with friends in PSOE, but also the various foundations associated with that organization and their leaders. So it's a great pleasure for me, and I'm sure for John, to join everyone here this evening. John, we'll hand over to you now to say, provide us with your views on the priorities and what we can expect from the Biden administration, what's happened so far and what to expect in the first 100 days or so, and how that will go forward. And then we'll open up afterwards for a conversation that Rocío and I will moderate. But John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We know it's very busy, and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jose Maria. Thank you, Juan. And thanks to Aspen Institute, Spain. I look forward to a day when we can all be together and make a return visit to Spain. So, but in these days of COVID, it's good to be able to kind of see everyone, at least on Zoom. And let me begin by saying, of course, the American people are relieved that we have someone in the White House who respects the office, who respects the Constitution, who is moving forward with a very aggressive program to both tackle COVID and to kind of restore the economy and restore the United States' place in the world. We still have cleanup to do from the last 4 years under Donald Trump. Of course, his refusal to accept the results of the election, coupled with his incitement to violence and insurrection on January 6th at the Capitol continue to play out, where he will go on trial for impeachment in the United States Senate next week. He's been remarkably quiet, I suppose, because they pulled the plug on his Twitter account, and as well as on Facebook. So he is not dominating the news as he did for 4 years, but he's still a presence in the body politic, and the country still remains quite divided in terms of its political perspective. The good news is I think Biden's come into office with a strong resolve to try to bring the country together and do aggressive things to build a more just and equitable economy and get past the COVID crisis. Just this morning, a new Morning Consult poll came out that showed his job approval at 58%, which is pretty good. It's not as high as some presidents came into office with, but it's quite good. And I think it reflects the fact that he's brought a professionalism, a sense of calmness, a sense of desire to bring the country together with him to the Oval Office. I'll say a little bit more about the program, and then I won't talk too long. We just open it up for a dialogue. But just in terms of the approval, by contrast, Trump came in around 46% with a job approval, and he never got above 50. His job approval hovered usually in the low 40s. It would bounce around a little bit between the high 30s and the mid 40s. But there was a distinctive majority, I would say, who disagreed and disapproved of his conduct in the White House and his handling of the presidency, and that resulted in his defeat and the fact that Biden not only got about 8 million more votes than he did, but Biden and Harris got more votes than any president in history by a long ways, and of course won the Electoral College, including some surprising results in Georgia and Arizona, as well as the more traditional blue states, including the blue wall that when I worked for Hillary Clinton, we lost in the upper Midwest states. So things have returned a bit to normal, but as I said, the country remains divided. I think it's important to note that promises matter in a campaign, and that Biden ran on and with a kind of distinct argument that the country was facing 4 crises: the COVID crisis, of course, the resulting economic crisis, and the recession that resulted. But we also were experiencing a racial justice crisis that was manifested in the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor by the police and the resulting demonstrations. But it was also manifest in disparate results by race by COVID itself. It exposed the health disparities that we have in this country. And he ran on interestingly, brought in and said he was going to tackle the climate crisis. And in order to rebuild the economy, you had to rebuild it in a green, sustainable way. And you had to do it in a way that recognized the environmental injustice, that linkage again with racial injustice and disparity that has characterized our country. And he said he was going to try to come out of the gates addressing all of that, and with a plan to rebuild the economy that would rely on more justice, more equity, a fairer deal for American workers. And I think he's ran a transition that was quite disciplined, quite thorough. You know, we have a long period of transition between our election and coming into governance, around 75 days. But they used that time both before the election and the time during that transition with focus and discipline. They didn't get thrown off, I think, by Trump's constant argument that there was election fraud when they could prove none. They didn't get thrown off by even the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. They kept their eyes on the ball. They built a team that promised to deliver on the problems that Biden identified in the society and his strategy for building out. So let me say a little bit that he really built his economic program and his proposition to the American people around two things. Beyond trying to restore normalcy and running on character and running on the fact of that he was a decent person, which probably was the most dominant issue in the campaign, but he also ran with a clear sense of what building a more just and equitable economy looked like. It focused on really three pillars, and he's, I think, beginning to attack all of them. One is you had to get on top of COVID. You had to have a better response. Trump ignored the science, dismissed the scientists, ran on trying to wish away the pandemic with disastrous results. So pillar one, get on top of the virus. You couldn't restart the economy. You couldn't get people to work. You couldn't get children back in school. You couldn't get young people back in university if you didn't get on top of the virus. And that was sort of job number one. But together with that, he put major emphasis on two other areas. One is what we have come to call care work, which is really trying to provide both support in the society for child care, for elder care, for paid family and medical leave, which United States, one of the few countries that doesn't guarantee as a right, to deal with ensuring that people could get back into the workforce. We've seen a dramatic decline of labor participation. That's particularly hit women as they've struggled with both family care as well as the big losses in the service sectors that we've seen in the during the recession. So in order to get people back to work, you had to provide the supports that were necessary to help them succeed at home and in the workplace. And then this idea that tackling climate change was also going to spur the economy, innovation. We were going to build back better. And we needed major investments in energy transformation across all the sectors that are critical to reducing emissions: power, transportation, buildings, natural solutions, and agriculture. He put a major emphasis on being a champion of attacking climate change, and also reinstating the U.S.'s position as both a good partner and a global leader in the fight for climate change, to once again join the EU in transforming our economies to ones that are green and sustainable. He has some other issues that were high on the agenda. He sent forward a comprehensive immigration bill on the first day that he was in office. He is proposing criminal justice reform, democracy reform. But let me just say just a couple more words and then just open it up. During the months of November and December, no one was quite sure whether he would be able to accomplish particularly this investment side of his agenda, because no one was quite sure who would control the United States Senate. And in addition to Biden's winning the electoral votes in the state of Georgia, the results on election day in November spurred 2 runoff elections. Democrats ended up, as you probably all know, winning both those races. Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff are now sitting in the United States Senate. That produced a 50-50 Senate. Kamala Harris, the first woman, the first person of color to occupy the vice presidency, is the president of the Senate, the tiebreaker in the Senate. So the Democrats now control the Senate. That is crucial to moving forward, even though it's still 50-50, as narrow as it can be. And the results in the House narrowed the majority that Nancy Pelosi has in the House. So you have very narrow majorities in both bodies. But it gives you the opportunity to access some parliamentary maneuvers that you see playing out now. And if you're following the US press, what's happening with respect to the COVID relief bill, which is the first thing out of the gate. It gives the chance to Democrats to move legislation through the Senate on, in essence, a partisan basis. With if they can secure the votes of all 50 Democratic senators, Harris breaking the tie, they can move legislation forward that has to do with budget and taxes, which is the most essential things that I think Biden needs to do. The first thing out of the gate is this COVID relief package. He's proposed a $1.9 trillion package. It includes, in addition to direct payments to people making under $150,000, couples making $150,000, and that actually ticks up if you have children. A payment of $1,400, which it includes extended unemployment compensation, a very substantial amount of money for vaccine distribution, aid to state and local governments, extension of paid family medical leave, relief for people who are facing eviction as a result of the COVID recession, and a bunch of other issues. It has not drawn Republican support, and the Republicans put forward a package of $600 billion. I think that's inadequate and will be rejected by the administration. So it's pretty likely that the bill that Biden has proposed will move forward rapidly. They'll probably vote on in the Senate as early as next week or the week thereafter, and they will. It's likely to be enacted by sometime in early March, which will provide a significant amount of relief for the U.S. economy. But I would call it a relief bill, not a stimulus bill. And I think they're planning to come along with another major package of investment to make good on his climate promises and arguments, with a big infrastructure package, including clean energy, clean transportation, et cetera. In the meantime, they're using, they've put together a very strong team, a lot of climate champions in their team. They've reorganized the White House by creating a White House climate office led by Gina McCarthy, the former EPA administrator, and putting John Kerry, appointing him as a special envoy for climate negotiations, and with a seat at the National Security Council table as a principal. So Biden has not only made climate change and progress on climate change central to his economic program, and of course his environmental program, but he's made it central to his national security and diplomatic program as well. And the fact that he's putting people of that stature in the White House to carry out and execute that strategy is, for those of us, I've spent my last several years largely working on climate change, both nationally and internationally. It's night and day between Trump and Biden, but it portends the ability to make tremendous progress, and particularly in cooperation with our European Union allies. So why don't I stop there and let's open it up for discussion and questions.
Thank you very much, John, for your intervention, and thank you to Deusto and Aspen Institute for organizing this. Let me please cash in my privileges as moderator and ask you myself some questions beforehand. Because, I mean, on the one side, my question is, how is President Biden going to combat President Trump, like this cleaning up that you were mentioning, while at the same time being, I use an expression that I heard you before that I like very much, this healer in chief, right? Like healer in chief of the big gaps and polarization that you have in your country, we do as well, and that causes the root of Trumpism, right? Of people voting for Trump on the first place, right? So how do you think he's going to combine that? And what is the role the Republican Party you think is going to play on that, right? Because now it's a role that we don't see very clear, right? What do you think there? How are they going to play it?
So let me start with the second question, actually, and then go to the first. I think the Republican Party has a civil war going on, but the forces of Trumpism are winning. You know, it looked that, particularly after the Capitol riot, the Capitol insurrection, that there might be really a pushback against the constant disinformation, lying, authoritarianism that Trump was pushing, and got worse and worse as time went on through the course of the election. Then in the post-election phase was as bad as it was during his 4 years in office. And it looked for at least a couple of days that there were there might be some pushback. 10 Republicans voted to impeach him as a result of his inciting that insurrection, including Liz Cheney, who's the third-ranking person in the House, and obviously comes from a kind of Republican royalty, as it were. And McConnell was harsh on him. McCarthy said some, negative things about Trump. I think what's happened is the people who voted for impeachment on the Republican side are being spurned. They're being pushed out of the party. Cheney herself faces a vote in the House of Representatives to strip her of her leadership position. There are primaries being run against the 10 individuals who voted to impeach. McCarthy made a pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago to see Trump, kind of went back in the tank. And instead you have their kind of inability to actually try to discipline some of these really extreme voices that were elected and sometimes in Congresswoman Bollard in Colorado beat an incumbent Republican to win a seat. And these people are really Taylor Greene in Georgia. These are real out of the, extreme QAnon wackos. And they seem to be unable to purge the party of those folks. Cheney, 10 county committees have voted to censure Cheney in Wyoming. So I think they're losing the battle to Trumpism. And there was fear that the Republican Party would split, that Trump would create a Patriot Party and leave mainstream Republicans behind. Instead, I think that they're pledging fealty to kind of a Trump view of what the Republican Party is kind of morphing in at least at the congressional level into a kind of extreme right party. There's still pockets of moderation in the Midwest and the Northeast. Still people who are elected as Republicans and who have rejected Trumpism. But I think the hope that people would wake up from the nightmare has not proven to be true. So what does that mean for Biden? What can he do if he's faced with a party that's actually moving, just locking in on the right? I think his challenge is not to be judged only by whether he can get working relationships with House Republicans or even a group of Senate Republicans. It's a kind of cultural mission at this point to argue in favor of a value structure for the country that's inclusive, that brings people together, that's based on kind of traditional American values of respect for neighbors, open dialogue, and I think he's got a chance to do that. He's the business community, which had been pretty loyal to Trump based on the fact that he was for low taxes, if nothing else, has moved substantially. I think they've rejected and been very harsh on what they saw in January. He's got the opportunity to, I think, open up space with civil society to bring people who were conservatives who have maybe left the Republican Party because of Trump into kind of coalition, at least into dialogue, open respect, and demonstrate what he said in the campaign, which is, you might not have voted for me, but I'm going to govern on your behalf. And that means showing up, getting out more into, during these days, it's sort of hard to go anywhere, but showing up in rural America, being, having ideas about how one builds better support structures for places that had kind of either fully embraced that view that the society, coast, East Coast, West Coast elites were abandoning them. Got back out there. He's good at it. That's where his heart is. That's where he comes from. And I think that he, if he can win 58% approval rating, that means he's getting Republicans. And that has to do more with what he's going to do to get COVID under control, people to work, and the respect he's going to show to people than it does about whether he can get 10 Republican votes on any particular matter in the Senate. So I think he's got to govern with the people, not with the politicians.
Sure. I mean, yes, but my fear is that even though this is true in the short term, and then you have this, this sort of restoration into decency. I'm sorry to use this word, but it's what I feel like, you are restoring decency in office, and you have these relief packages with footnote. Always, also in the last crisis, the US have proven to be much more aggressive and progressive in the relief economic packages that we in Europe. So it's true that you have this time with relief and restoration, and this is going to give time to President Biden and his administration. But then, where it is climate change, if we're talking about inequality, or even if we're talking about this cultural and political change, this thing need a lot of time to deliver, And then delivery is not always easy. It has a lot of trade-offs. It has a lot of people who loses things, and you have to compensate them. So, it's managing the reforms, which are easier said than done, right? And so my fear is that I see this opportunity in the short term, let's say the first year of the President Biden's administration, but then, delivering on climate change is not easy. Delivering on inequality is not easy nor short term. Delivering on a cultural and political in such polarized country as the US is at the moment is not easy either, right? So my fear is not at the beginning, but how to continue.
Given those narrow majorities in the House and Senate, we're going to have, Judgment Day is November of 2022. It's coming up pretty fast. And I think that's why he put such an emphasis on experience in the people. Some people have said, geez, all you're doing is bringing back everybody who worked for Obama. And there's some reality to that, actually. But I think that what Biden really, and his transition, and Ron Klain, his chief of staff, the people who are running his government, put an emphasis on is we have to have people who are experienced, who know how to get the job done, who can get going quickly, who can get into those agencies which were decimated under Trump and kind of restore morale, start firing, start doing things. And I think he's got to show results. He has the advantage of, if he can get the vaccine distribution going right, I think people will give him a lot of credit for that. But he's got to show results to be able to hold even those narrow majorities in the House and Senate if he's going to have any chance of doing anything in the next 2 years. That was the bitter lesson in 2010 when Obama lost the House of Representatives. And I lived through the 1994 election when Clinton lost both the House and the Senate. And so a lot of Clinton's economic success was really built on the bill he passed in the first year, the bills he passed in the first year of his presidency, but they continued to pay dividends. We had more of a working relationship with the Republicans. They hated Clinton and they impeached him, but we actually could negotiate legislation with them. It's kind of a different time. It's kind of quaint to think about it, but he's just got to show results, and he's got to try to, he's got to do something else. You referenced the right. I think Obama would agree with me. I think Obama and his team spent so much time legislating and attacking the problems that they forgot to sell it. And one of the reasons they lost to the Tea Party and lost the House was people both didn't feel the tangible results, and the conversation got too focused on Washington. It wasn't out with the people. And I think they have to resist that and be, they have to be showing up in those communities, showing that the government can be on the side of the people. And there are a lot of ways to do that. I think they still have a fair amount of ability and authority, but there's no question that fossil fuel industry is already spending tremendous amounts of money on advertising, trying to push back on the climate change package, et cetera. So it's going to be a dogfight, but he's got to win the politics, not just the next two recovery packages.
Matt?
Yeah, sure. John, I wonder if we can, you mentioned the recovery package and its focus on climate. I wonder if we could dig down a little bit into that, both in terms of what you think it means for NAFTA as a production area. There's a pledge for having 500,000 EV points, but there's obviously, how does that work with the supply chain? And in particular, I think for the Spanish audience with regards to Mexico and its role therein. But then also how you see climate change playing out more broadly in relations with India, China, the European Union, and the US's role in all of that heading into COP26.
Well, that's a lot. I think that Biden's put an emphasis, I think, again, a little bit, I think he understood what Trump's appeal was in that industrial heartland in the Midwest, and it's countering that. Trump never really delivered, but he had the rhetoric right, that people had been forgotten there and that the government had abandoned them. So he's put a major emphasis on, in this whole Build Back Better idea, that these things are going to create a cycle of job creation in the United States. An emphasis on which could be a little bit tricky and problematic with our neighbors. My guess is the North America side of this will be kind of worked out by under the MCA and the trade agreement. But he's put an emphasis on Buy America in terms of government procurement. He just ordered that the government fleet of vehicles, or about the U.S. government owns about 650,000 vehicles, be converted to not instantly, but as a replace, be converted to electric vehicles. But he's also noted that they need to be made in the U.S. with in plants that have labor agreements. So he's trying to use the leverage he has as a purchaser to make that transition happen. That could potentially run into some friction with given the complex supply chains, particularly in the auto industry and in the North America content. And I think they'll have to ameliorate a little bit and work that out. He's gonna, his first meeting is likely to be with Prime Minister Trudeau. His first phone call as president was with Trudeau, and to a foreign leader. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the U.S. and Canada in particular, but the U.S., Canada, and Mexico to cooperate on a clean energy zone and moving all the economies forward. And there's a lot of opportunity there. I think with respect to clean power in particular, I think there are going to be European vendors who are interested in that. There'll be a big push in Trump resisted offshore wind, for example. There's a lot of pent-up demand for that. There's going to be a lot of capacity to develop the wind resource, particularly in the Northeast and New England. There's going to be I think, global race to create the kind of value and technology that's going to go into a more sustainable economy. And the other thing I would say, particularly about the EU, is that both the EU and Biden, so now the US and EU, have argued that as they're moving forward, they need to not undermine their industries that are in tradable goods by burdening them with the need to decarbonize, while others are kind of free riding. What that means is the EU's moving forward with a carbon border adjustment. I think Biden's embraced that idea. The systems are different. The spine of the European system is a carbon trading system with standards that connect to that. The US is more of a standards-based system. So kind of working out a standards-based solution so that there can be free trade in green and sustainable climate-friendly goods is really, I think, critical. But the US-EU relationship is also really fundamental with regard to getting more ambition out of China and getting faster movement on decarbonization out of China. So I think it's not a coincidence that one of Kerry's first calls was to Frans Timmermans. His first meeting was with the EU foreign ministers. I think the alignment of the US and the EU in a global decarbonization project, including providing the financing that's going to be necessary for the less developed countries to be able to build out sustainable and green, is going to be a critical part of what's going on this year. The UK has the COP, the G7. I think they are co-chairs of the G20 with Italy. This is a big year to try to align both the transatlantic relationship and restore it overall, to try to particularly do that on climate, to kind of have a perspective where we're in harness rather than fighting with each other, and then try to see if we can get more ambition from China. She pledged net zero by 2060. They have not embraced the 1.5 goal, the 1.5 degree C rise in global average temperatures. Net zero by 2060 is, yeah, I would rather it be 2050, but it's, that's good. The problem is what's going on in the 2020s. They need to decarbonize faster. They're still building out coal. They're still financing offshore coal through the BRI. So there's a lot of change we need to see happen from China. And I think the US and the EU working cooperatively and trying to, get Asia Pacific allies as well. Those are, they're more bilateral. They're a little bit different. We need to get South Korea and Japan to stop financing coal. We need to get Australia, probably a better government in my view, but but at least a better climate policy. Those things are kind of pressure plates that are gonna build the global economy. But most importantly, the post-COVID recovery has to be green. It has to be sustainable, and there's going to be trillions of dollars spent coming out of this recession, and that has to be done in a sustainable way, I think.
Thank you very much, John. Let me try to group some of the questions that were passed from the public. One, I start with my favorite, because I'm a big fan, what can I say, of Vice President Harris. And they are asking you if you think that she's going to have a bigger role than other Vice Presidents had in history, and what if you can advance a bit what the role is going to be. There are some questions also about foreign policy. You were speaking now about China and Mexico, but because obviously what you told us are all domestic policy priorities, right? And in foreign policy terms, there were specific questions like, do you think that President Biden is going to do some of the things that President Trump did, like with Morocco specifically, or with Israel and the Jerusalem capital city? But in general, foreign policy, this is some of the questions are about that. And also about the role of the media, right? Mm-hmm. Because obviously we've seen, it's true that during the Capitol episode, we saw all the media reacting more or less, as it was expected in a democracy, and with agreeing to the rule of law. But it's true that you have had very, very polarized media, like, with all this thing of the fake news, etc. Right? So these are the three questions. I also have two gossip questions, so I can pose them to you. Excellent. One of the gossip questions is, if you could tell us a bit more gossip, political gossip, I mean, obviously. So what do you think happened between the January 6th and the inauguration day, and what's Trump's involvement during these days, and Trump's and his family involvement? And the second question is from someone that just read the Obama memoirs and was asking you if you could tell us a bit more about you being one of the key persons convincing Hillary Clinton to accept being Secretary of State of President Obama. So I know it's a lot. Just feel free to pick wherever.
Well, look, it's more than just historic that a woman of color, a daughter of immigrants, got elected vice president. First woman, first person of color, maybe not the first daughter of immigrants, but the first recent daughter of immigrants to be elected. I think that she is going, I think based on conversations she's had with the president, the vice president is going to play the kind of role that President Biden played to President Obama, rather than having one specific silo of activity or one or two things that she was going to specialize in, she'll be a key participant in decisions across the board. And she has obviously a kind of a somewhat different role as a result of the 50-50 Senate. There could be the need for her to spend more time up there. That happened once before in recent history in 2000, after the results of Bush v. Gore and Bush becomes president. The Senate was locked 50-50. And so Cheney played that role.